What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Week 3 Studs and Duds film recap show, where we're going to break down every game, what I saw on film, a quick overview for every team heading into this week, and then talking about the studs and duds as far as the players are concerned for every game. Now, we are going to see a lot more duds this week. You know, the first couple weeks, we're kind of letting things play out. We're not going to overreact to a couple bad games, but I think after 3 games, we're really starting to see, who may have had breakout seasons last year, and they're just maybe not quite as good as we had thought from the year before, or aging players coming out slow. We've seen 3 bad games now, so you are going to see a lot more duds this week. We got a ton of names this week, and I promise I am going to talk about all 16 games last week. I somehow managed to forget 2, so I'm not going to let that happen again. Lesson learned there. Let's get right into it here. We're going to start off with the star of the week, and it's an offensive lineman. Got to give some love to the Hog Mollies, and it's going to be Taylor Moton, right tackle for the Carolina Panthers. Has been a huge reason why the Panthers are still competing right now. Darrell Williams was the highest rated PFF right tackle last year, and it turns out with Williams injured, his backup is actually a hell of a player. He's a second-round pick from a couple years ago. I do know a lot of people actually thought of him as a first-round prospect. Turns out those people are right, because Taylor Moton has been a rock at right tackle all 3 weeks playing well. I was really worried about what this Panthers offense was going to look like without both their tackles, but Moton has been huge and is a big reason the Panthers are hanging in there right now. So Moton's going to go at +3 this week on my Madden 19 custom roster. And then my dud of the week, Deone Bucannon, who had an absolute breakout in 2015 when the Cardinals were the story of the NFL. Bucannon, kind of a trailblazer in the whole safety converting to linebacker thing. And for a while, he was actually considered one of the most prolific linebackers in the NFL. But he has fallen off a cliff since then. Last season, he really struggled, particularly in run defense between the tackles. His confidence seemed to fall off. His coverage was not as good last year. And now this year, in a new scheme, he was actually benched this week, played 1 snap this week, really struggling. He definitely looks like a man who has a long way to go before he's considered anything close to what he once was. And Arizona, in general, has far from a positive outlook right now. So let's get into the games here. We're going to start with the game everyone wants to hear me specifically talk about, the Jets visiting the Cleveland Browns, Baker Mayfield making his rookie debut here. So many people, after Baker comes out and looks great, coming to me saying, admit you were wrong. Baker's clearly better than Darnold. It's no secret. I'm a Darnold over Baker Mayfield guy. And look, Baker Mayfield was impressive on Thursday night. Most notably, that arm strength. And you can come out and say that you saw it at Oklahoma. That's fine. I watched, 12 games of him at Oklahoma, mostly his senior year. I did not see this type of arm strength completing tight window throws like this in college. John Middlecoff actually tweeted as well. He's a reputable former scout, writer on the West Coast, that most impressive for him is his development in his arm strength from his days at Oklahoma. And I couldn't agree more. So definitely impressed by the arm strength. And I even found myself cheering for the Browns. I had money on the Jets. I obviously wanted to see Sam Darnold look better than Baker, just based on what I've said, but I couldn't stop myself from cheering for Baker. It was too fun. The energy, his teammates clearly wanted to play for him. So I'm really excited to watch him play on the road now in the NFL at Oakland. Now, my big criticisms of Baker was always, what's he look like moving the ball legitimately downfield in the NFL? He had 2 throws of 21 yards exactly. Those were his highest target points, and they were fine. But what does he look like when they want to hit Antonio Callaway 40 yards down the field? We saw Tyrod Taylor miss that throw earlier in that game. What does Baker look like doing that? Is the arm strength part of technique, or is it natural arm talent? I'm not trying to hate on Baker. I'm just analyzing what I saw. While I was impressed by that arm strength, a lot of those throws were coming from a clean pocket. So what does he look like under more pressure when he's got to throw off balance, throw on the move? Can he fit those tight window throws? So definitely impressed by Baker in his debut. The Browns defense continuing to impress as well. And then you flip it over to the Jets side, and I was really disappointed in their approach. I thought in week 2, they really opened up this offense. They put a lot of trust in Sam Darnold. Yes, he made 1 mistake early, but he responded. He was manipulating the pocket, using the entire field. And frankly, in week 2, I thought he looked like a combination of Andrew Luck and Phillip Rivers. They completely bottle up, basically running the ball, running screens on first and second down, setting up difficult situations for Darnold on third down. So, it was not a good night for Darnold. The interception late in that game is inexcusable, and I've kind of taken the approach that he's young, he'll learn from his mistakes, but at some point you do have to stop making those mistakes and not become Jameis Winston. At what point is the line? I'm not entirely sure. Baker looked better than Darnold on Thursday night. There will be weeks where Darnold looks better than Baker, and there'll be weeks where Baker looks better than Darnold. Blake Bortles looked better than Tom Brady last week. The reality is, especially with Josh Allen looking the way he does, there's a situation where all three of these quarterbacks are really good. And then as for the Jets' defense, they really didn't do a whole lot, especially in the second half. The pass rush came up flat. The coverage, especially in these linebackers, started to break down. So definitely a concerning game for the Jets' defense. So let's talk about the studs and duds from this game. Baker is going to be a stud, of course. So he's going to go up +1 just after playing 2 halves of football, most notably being that arm strength. He's going to go up a couple throw power this week, up to 93 throw power. Now you see him rip those balls in there on those short throws. Like I said, I'm ready to see him rip those balls downfield and use the entire field. He clearly has something special in that arm, but he did not utilize that part of the field. I didn't see it in college either. So I still want to see him generate that zip, moving the ball downfield, while I was impressed with his ability in the short game. And then Desmond Harrison, the left tackle for the Browns, he's going to go up a couple this week. Starting to settle in there at left tackle. I still wonder why they aren't going with Austin Corbett, who was a second-round pick. They're playing the undrafted rookie at left tackle instead, starting to show, at least some talent there at left tackle. Tyrod's going to go down 1 this week. I don't really have to explain that. He's been really bad this year, losing that starting job. Joe Schobert, impressing. I've been critical of him in the past, being just a tackle machine, filling in that Preston Brown prototype. But he's actually the guy on the field playing every snap. It's not Christian Kirksey. It's not Jamie Collins. Joe Schobert is the guy they're going with in coverage, and he's playing pretty well there. So he's going to get some love this week. And then Larry Ogunjobi going up again for the second time this year, really emerging in his second year. This is a guy that was probably underutilized last year as a rookie, really came on. Definitely a guy you want to keep your eye on when you watch the Browns play football. So moving on, Saints at Falcons. And moving forward, I'm just going to refer to the NFC South this year as the Big 12 because there is no defense outside of Carolina in this division. And that's exactly what we saw here. On Atlanta's side, it's a lot of injury-related stuff. I've kind of cracked jokes at Atlanta for their ridiculous amount of health that they've had over the last 2 years. It's almost like this is all catching up all at once at the worst time when their offense is really clicking like it was in the Kyle Shanahan days. But both these teams are elite offensively. Both have offensive lines, both have receivers, both have quarterbacks, both have running backs, and both, well, at least on New Orleans side, have elite play calling. That's to be determined. It's definitely been better in Atlanta the last couple weeks. But then defensively, you worry about New Orleans because they've regressed so much, and it does seem like last year was an outlier. They have not played good defense this year. And then for Atlanta, I didn't love their defense to begin with, but so many injuries. So really both these teams are going to have to score a lot of points to win. I do think New Orleans could come back a little bit, but it's clearly not a very good defense right now. And by the way, just another game where the ridiculously bad overtime rules we have in the NFL decided the winner of this game. I mean, come on, the winner of this coin toss was winning that game. It's ridiculous. My idea, get rid of kickoffs, get rid of punts, start the game on the 20-yard line. On fourth down, you can either have the other team get the ball on their 20 or you can go for it, and both sides have a chance to answer until the game's done. Get rid of this stupid sudden death thing. It's so unfair to offensive-minded teams. And more often than not, it feels like these are shootout games that is just decided by the flip of a coin. And it's really stupid. Change that stuff, along with the roughing rule. So anyway, studs and duds from this game. Michael Thomas getting a +1. He's been going off this year. He's starting to enter that tier 1 of receivers. At this rate, he will be there by the end of the year. He's just killing it. Ken Crawley, a corner for the Saints, who had a pretty good year last year. He's definitely a reason that this defense has taken a step back this year. Opposing teams are picking on him and PJ Williams quite a bit. And then a young guy for Atlanta, Foyesade Aluakun, probably butchered that, but super athletic, workout freak, but coming from Yale. He's flushed into a starting role because of the injuries there with Deion Jones, and he had a really good game this week. Really intriguing player. Will be interesting to see how his season develops. Now we've got Denver at Baltimore. A little bit more of a higher scoring game than I would have anticipated. Did have some big special teams plays in this one. But all in all, not a ton of surprises. I thought Denver's defense would play a little better, but their offense was all right. And then on Baltimore's side, still no CJ Mosley, obviously hurting their defense, but they're clearly better at home, as are most defensive-minded teams. But give some credit to Joe Flacco, John Brown, this offensive line. They've taken a nice jump up offensively from what they were last year. Really excited to see Baltimore play Steelers this week, Sunday Night Football. But both these teams are solid. I think both these teams are going to compete in the AFC for playoff spots. So studs and duds, we've got Connor McGovern, guard for Denver. His PFF grades are off the charts, so he's going to get a +1. And then we got Bradley Roby. He was on my breakouts list. I thought with getting rid of Aqib Talib, they saw Bradley Roby as a guy that was ready to step in as that number 2 lockdown guy. They probably did see him like that, but it's not paying off. He's not playing well this year, so he's going to go down to Matt Skura, moving over to Baltimore's side. This is something we talked about in the Ravens deep dive, how this looked like a hole at center heading into the year, but they've kind of got a good track record of developing these offensive linemen. Just as early as last year, we saw Ryan Jensen kind of come out of nowhere and play at a high level at center. They let him go. He gets a bunch of money in free agency, and we'll actually talk about him later, but he's not playing well for Tampa. But Matt Skura coming in, playing well at center. He's going to go up 1 this week, might continue to go up. And then Brent Urban, he's filling in that Lawrence Guy role, playing really good run defense, contributing to this good defense. So next we got the Bengals at the Panthers. We mentioned Taylor Moton early on, but I'm really impressed with this Panthers offense. I think Cam Newton's having an under-the-radar, very good season. I think he's doing a lot with not a lot right now. I don't love these receivers. DJ Moore hasn't really stepped up yet. Greg Olsen is done. It's really just Cam Newton, Christian McCaffrey, and an offensive line that's playing better than you might expect. Defensively, Carolina's very solid. The D-backs, a bit of a concern. They did sign Eric Reed this week, could help a little bit. And then on the Bengals side, kind of more of the same. I still see them as a slightly above average offense. They do have an injury to AJ Green right now. But just with a below average offensive line and Andy Dalton, it's going to be hard to be consistent from drive to drive. But from game to game, they should be solid offensively. And then defensively, really love that front seven. So this was a pretty tight matchup. I think both these teams putting together pretty solid seasons at this point. I feel pretty good if I was a fan of either of these teams. Studs and duds from this game. Starting on the Bengals side, Tyler Boyd has been killing it this year, finally kind of emerging. The second round pick from, 3 drafts ago? And with this AJ Green injury, he could be asked to step up as the team's number 1 receiver right now. It's not John Ross right now. John Ross, still some mental mistakes this year, but it's been a slow developing career for Tyler Boyd, but he does seem to have emerged. Then we got Ryan Glasgow. He's already gone up once this year. He's going up again, interior D lineman for the Bengals. Now, I think he got injured in this game. I have no idea the severity of that, but regardless, he played well in run defense this week. And then on the Carolina side, Dante Jackson, rookie corner, freak athlete out of LSU. A shorter guy, so he falls into the second round, but a 4.3, 240 guy with insane agility scores as well, making an impact as a rookie right away. He had 2 interceptions in this game, and if it weren't for Taylor Moton on the other side of the ball, Dante Jackson just might have been my star of the week. So 2 young players really stepping up for this Panthers team. It's exactly what you need to remain contenders in the NFC. I talked about this in my power rankings. I think Carolina might be one of my 2 wildcard teams as of right now. And then F.A. Obata, total no-name guy. He's a London-born dude playing on the edge. Pretty sure he had a sack and an interception in this game. You kept hearing his name as the game went on. He's going to go up +1 this week. We'll see if there's anything there or if it was a fluke week. And then, of course, Taylor Moton, our star of the week. So now we got Tennessee at Jacksonville. And my God, did I just have the biggest smile on my face in this game, because I've been saying this whole summer that Jacksonville's going to stink because of Blake Bortles. I called them missing the playoffs my lock of the year for a futures bet. And Blake Bortles comes out, throws for like 130 yards on 33 attempts, never looks downfield, was basically relying on his defense and his receivers to make big plays. And Tennessee just basically did nothing and hung around kicking field goals until the clock hit 0. So in a game where both sides were basically begging the other team to make a mistake and lose that game, you had Blake Bortles against a hampered Marcus Mariota who couldn't feel his hand, playing at home, puts up 6 points, and the clock hit 0 and they lost. So that's my problem with Jacksonville. Still a good defense, but if you're playing a defense that understands how to stop a crossing route from going for 50 yards, then you have a decent chance to beat this Jacksonville team. On the Tennessee side, I kind of like where this team's at right now, right? They're 2-1. They got a rookie coach. They've really been hit with a ton of adversity with the quarterback injuries to their offensive linemen in the first game, in a double delayed game in Miami. So they've had just a really wild start to their season, but here they are, 2-1, and they've got the defending champs coming to town against Philadelphia. They almost get to hit the reset button on their season, and they're 2-1. So I'd be pretty excited if I was a Titans fan right now. Their defense kind of flying under the radar right now. I like that pass rush. So we'll see how they hang with the defending champs this week. Studs and duds this week. A big dud, Rashard Matthews. We talked about him last week, how he's basically fallen off the face of the earth. And that became official this week as the Titans just released him. He did nothing in this game. So he's going to come down 4 and hit free agency. And then Taywan Taylor, who did have a good game here, but also receiving a vote of confidence in letting Rashard Matthews go. He's going to get a +1. So he's a 70 overall now. For those that are familiar with my tiering system, a 70 to a 74 is considered a starting caliber player by my roster. And then we've got a dud for Jacksonville here. Really disappointing free agent signing here, Andrew Norwell. Now, he was an undrafted free agent, had a really good start to his career in Carolina, but Jacksonville broke the bank for this player, and he's a good pass protector, but he's not a great athlete. He's not really physically imposing. He's just kind of a technician. And for a team that really wants to run the ball and kind of control the line of scrimmage, that's really not what Andrew Norwell is or what he's been doing this year. So he comes down 2. His PFF ratings have been terrible this year as well. And, like I said, he's a nice player, but I think Jacksonville is probably regretting that free agent move right now. They were actually getting better push from that position, I think, from what they had last year. So the AFC South tightening up there with this game. And then let's move on and talk about the crazy upset, Buffalo at Minnesota. Not going to spend a lot of time here because this was just a weird game for Minnesota. You had Everson Griffin getting in an issue, mental health concerns, is in an issue with the authorities here just before the game, or at least a day before, whatever. Hard to follow the story, to be honest. You had your running back out, but they're 17-point favorites. They show up, they're at home. Typical trap game. Really weren't mentally prepared for this game. They weren't schematically prepared for what they were going to get from Josh Allen. Buffalo comes out, forces a few turnovers early, takes advantage of Minnesota's weakness on that offensive line, and before you knew it, it was like 24-0. So I'm recording this about an hour before Thursday Night Football happens. By the time this video is up, it will have happened. So we'll see how mentally tough this Minnesota football team is as a 7-point underdog themselves now heading into LA. But I still think it's a really talented team. I'm not going to freak out right now. But then Buffalo, reminding us that this was a playoff team last year, and the AFC stunk last year. They probably weren't a playoff team most seasons, but they were a competitive football team last year. They've got a good defense. I believe I heard that Marrone took over the play calling in the second half of that Chargers game, which makes sense because the defense played a lot better starting at halftime last week. So if this defense can be relevant, and then you get Josh Allen, who looks like a stud right now, playing with a terrible surrounding core, but if you get good quarterback play paired with that defense, why couldn't they be a playoff team in the AFC again? I could see it. We'll see how they look in Green Bay this week, but things definitely looking up for Buffalo, especially because it looks like you got your franchise quarterback, who we'll talk about in a sec. So the risers and fallers in this game, Lorenzo Alexander continuing to show up just when you think he's done. He's like 35 years old. He's having a second career renaissance here. He puts up like 9 hurries in this game, and he's having a good season. So he's going to go up 2. And then we got Josh Allen going up +1 this week. You guys know I was a Josh Allen guy, one of few, basically. Everyone's scared off by that completion percentage. They think he's inaccurate. I watch him on film. You see him throw a football. Throws one of the best 20-yard outs you'll ever see. I had full confidence as a smart guy surrounded by NFL coaches that he could figure out how to throw a check down without sailing it over the running back's head. And frankly, in this game, at a really good Minnesota team who's seemingly impossible to beat in their own stadium over the last year, Josh Allen showed us flashes of Carson Wentz as a rookie. He looked like a combination of Carson Wentz and Cam Newton in this one. Now, he didn't have to do a whole lot. There were some broken coverages for Minnesota. He did a good job executing, but, you're very optimistic right now if you're a Bills fan. It's looking like a really good pick. We'll see how he continues to develop. But then Kelvin Benjamin is going to get a -3 this week. He's been terrible, and really just seemed to kind of climax this week. He's never been able to separate, and I've never been a Kelvin Benjamin guy. But you pair that with now dropping the ball and not playing very physical, it's a problem. And that's this team's number one. So like I said, if you got Josh Allen playing well with this team, just wait for the future here, because he doesn't have an offensive line. He doesn't have any receiver help. And then you go to Minnesota. I did take the one overall back from Kirk Cousins that he got last week. Now, I get that he did not really have any protection in this game, but you can't fumble those footballs. You got to be able to sense that pressure. This has always been the problem with Kirk Cousins. He's a momentum quarterback. His lows can be very low, and that's what we saw in this game. And it wasn't just the big pass rush. He missed some throws as well earlier in this game when this team had a chance to get back into it. So it's not an overreaction here. It's basically just taking back what he earned last week. He's still going to come in ranked as a top 14 quarterback here. And I'm still impressed overall by Kirk on the season. But, this was definitely a step back and cause for a little concern against the Bills. And then Kyle Rudolph, terrible game, terrible season. I said it in the Vikings deep dive in the preseason. I think Kyle Rudolph is the single most overrated player in this league. He's known from fantasy football for catching touchdowns, but that's literally all he does. He's a tall guy who can catch the football in the red zone. He doesn't separate as a receiver. He's a terrible blocker for a very big tight end. That's my biggest problem with him, is he has a physical advantage where he could actually be a really good blocking tight end. So I don't know if it's unwillingness or he just doesn't have blocking instincts, but dude, I just don't get it with Kyle Rudolph. He doesn't have any run after the catch ability, so he comes down 2 this week. Now, he's due like $8 million next year, but has no dead money. I think he's a guaranteed release here, and we'll see what his market is, what the rest of the NFL thinks about Kyle Rudolph. So let's move on. San Francisco at Kansas City. Kansas City just continuing to be explosive on offense. You'd still be worried about that defense if you're a Chiefs fan. They did show some decent things. Justin Houston made an impact in this game. Good to see him getting re-involved here. I've been a little critical of his start to this season. And then hopefully Eric Berry comes back sooner rather than later to help out this secondary that's really struggling right now. For the 49ers, your season's over. I'm sorry. Your defense has really played poorly this year. A lot of your young players you were excited about have not stepped up, and this offense is going to be terrible now without Jimmy Garoppolo. It wasn't even that good with Jimmy Garoppolo. Outside of George Kittle, you just don't really have any good weapons right now. I get that you got Kyle Shanahan, but man, this is going to be a rough finish. At least you're going to be in the running now for the Nick Bosa, Ed Oliver sweepstakes in the draft. But let's get into the risers and fallers here. It's all on the 49ers side. I think the Chiefs were kind of exactly what they've been. No bump for Patrick Mahomes this week. Just kind of showed us more of the same, gives us a little more confidence every week. Really intrigued to see how he looks at Denver this week. I do think Mahomes actually left some plays out there. I know he had some ridiculous plays, and I'm not going to ignore those, and I'm not trying to be critical of Mahomes. I love everything he's doing, but you did see some plays where he did not do the best job sensing pressure, overthrew some players. It happens. I'm just trying to point out that he's not Aaron Rodgers right now. He might get there, but I'm excited to see how he looks at Denver against a good defense this week. So like I said, it's all on the 49ers side this week. George Kittle is going to go up. He had a really good game yet again, and I don't think his production's really going to be there the rest of the year. So I really wanted to get him another +1 before he may have lost his chance to continue developing this year without his quarterback. But we'll see. Him and Beathard do have a rapport from the Iowa days. It could be even more for Kittle. But the rest of this, it's not going to be the best for 49ers fans. A lot of fallers here. Pierre Garçon, no surprise really. He's kind of fallen off. He's had a lot of injuries in his career. He's not an impact here. He's going to go down -2. Arik Armstead, one of those young players that I just mentioned, just not really playing at a high level right now. He was injured last year. Has not come back strong. I think this team had some high expectations for him. He has not met that yet. Akello Weatherspoon finished last year very strong, but he has really struggled this year. And they've played some good offenses, and he could certainly turn some things around. I still like him as a young player, but I was projecting a really good season for Witherspoon. And then Richard Sherman, he is going to injure his ankle here. That's definitely becoming a concern. He's not even playing at that high of a level to begin with. He comes down 2, still a good corner. Don't get me wrong, but we had him ranked near that top 10 corner range. It's not him anymore. He's a smart player. He can still turn the ball over, but in man-to-man, he's just not a lockdown guy anymore, and that's fine. And then Adrian Colbert, the last guy here, or Colbert. Not sure if you go with the French dialect on that one or not, but young player, showed some nice things last year, has really struggled at safety this year. So let's move on. Indianapolis at Philadelphia. Now, I actually picked this to be an upset outright. Indianapolis comes all the way down to the goal line. Unfortunately, for me, they can't pull it off at the very end as like 6-point underdogs going into the defending Super Bowl champs. Really like this Colts defense right now. That's why I was confident in that bet. I was talking to my roommate today about how fun the Colts defense to watch is, and he's like, who do they have? What are they even doing? Well, let me introduce you to their front three. You got Margus Hunt is killing it right now. Al Woods is one of the best, if not the best nose tackle outside of Snacks Harrison in the NFL right now. You got Jabal Sheard in there, a really underrated pass rusher. They set the tone defensively. You got some young linebackers flying around. Malik Hooker in the back level is a stud. They got some holes, but they play solid defense for a team that people thought was going to be hot butter defensively. And then Philly's just, they're not ready yet. They're a good football team right now. They control the line of scrimmage. Offensively, they're looking for some rhythm. Carson Wentz gave us some flashes of what he was last year. He showed some cold streaks as well. So this was a pretty scrappy game on both sides. Andrew Luck kind of showing his first signs to me of a drop-off in arm talent. I know I've been kind of saying he's back, he's good, the Colts are good to go. So, he's still playing at a high level. He's still a great decision maker. He's still got great pocket awareness, ability to extend plays, all that. He's still mobile. But that arm that wasn't really elite to begin with, it does seem to be hindered a little bit right now. And I don't know if that's going to come back or what's going on there. They brought in Jacoby Brissett for the Hail Mary. That's probably a combination of, Jacoby's got a howitzer, but maybe they also didn't want Luck to injure himself trying to throw it as hard as he could. I don't know. That was kind of weird. But a good game all around. Always fun to watch games with high-level quarterback play like this. So the studs and duds from this one, we've actually got Quentin Nelson as a dud. And this is mainly just because we had him rated very high coming into the year. Everyone had kind of written him down as the safest pick in the draft, just a total stud. Well, he's actually not playing that great right now. His PFF ratings are somewhere in the 60s, which is below average for every game. And I think getting Anthony Costanzo back eventually at left tackle is definitely going to help. He's going to have some more help there as opposed to having to help an inferior left tackle. But he hasn't exactly had this seamless transition into being a dominant guard in the NFL. So he's going to come down just a little bit. Still a really good player, though. Still have a great outlook for his future. Just might take a little bit to get there. And then Anthony Walker at middle linebacker. Now he's emerging next to Darius Leonard, was our star of the week last year. So they've got some really fast young linebackers. They're doing it the right way with that modern linebacker there, playing behind a really good D-line. That's definitely the strength of their defense is that athleticism in the front seven. And then Andrew Luck is actually going to come down one this week. That throw power is going to come down from a 94 to a 92. He just isn't showing the same arm he once had. Still going to be considered an elite quarterback by me. I still think he's by far the best quarterback in this division, but you guys know I hold Andrew Luck very highly, and he's just not playing quite at that height right now. We'll see if he continues to get healthy and more acclimated as he played. Even I was expecting a bit of a curve here, getting reacclimated. That's exactly what we're seeing here, just maybe a little more harsh than I had expected. I had kind of taken he's probably going to be almost full go. He's probably at about 80-85% right now. And then on the Phillies side, a little change here on the D-line. Michael Bennett, he's a role player on this team. He was not good in Seattle last year. He's traded for, a 4th-round pick. He's still a fine player, and he's going to come down, so he's a 78 now. But he's much more of a name than an impact player right now. He's not really made an impact to this point. Just part of that really good rotation. But one guy that has been making a big impact, Chris Long. Really remarkable how he has just resurrected his career. I mean, he had a couple really good years when he was younger with the Rams as one of the best edge rushers in the NFL, and then he disappeared, comes back to Philadelphia, and every time he's on the field, I feel like he's in the backfield. So he goes up one this week. That's going to do it for this game. Let's go to the game in Houston where the Giants were visiting. The Giants in this one had the best offensive performance I think they've probably had in about 3 years. Eli looked great, man. He looked better than I've maybe ever seen him in this game. He couldn't miss a throw. He was throwing strikes. And it's not like the pass protection was that much better. They did bench, finally, Eric Flowers, but he was still getting a lot of pressure, especially from J.J. Watt in this game, who did have 3 sacks. But I just thought overall, Eli just played well. simply put. And you got the receivers involved. Odell Beckham was dominant. They couldn't cover him on a slant route. Houston to save their life. So we'll see if that was an aberration or a trend here with New York heading into next week. They're going to go up against New Orleans, where they're going to have to look that good offensively to keep pace. The Giants defense looked good, but that's to be expected against this Houston defense that is just terrible right now. Houston offense, rather. They can't block anyone. They don't have any sort of a running game. Deshaun Watson has made some nice plays here and there, but he's not really taking over any games. Houston has probably been the biggest disappointment of any team in the NFL to this point. Bill O'Brien definitely on that hot seat right now. A lot of high expectations for this team this year. So let's get into the studs and duds. Kerry Wynn for the Giants. He's actually a player that has bounced around a little. He's been on this Giants team in the past, and I've noticed him in the past when he's on the field, he makes plays, but just for whatever reason, he didn't impress in practice, doesn't have the physical pedigree, whatever it is, he hasn't gotten a lot of playing time, but he's in there for New York right now, playing at a very high level as a starter right now. He was the player of this game, despite what the Giants did offensively. He was just wrecking the Houston front, which, again, it's a bad offensive line, but good for Kerry Wynn. He's going to go up 3 this week. And then flipping over to the Houston side of the ball, they're going to have some fallers here. All on the defensive side of the ball, as this defense has really disappointed and has not played to the level I thought they would. And it's going to start with Whitney Merciless, coming off a serious injury. He's getting older. He's getting less snaps every week, and he's not making the most of them. So he comes down 3. He already fell earlier this year. Definitely see him getting kind of phased out here. I don't think he's part of the future, even though he's only like 28, 29. And then Zach Cunningham, a linebacker who had a really good rookie year out of Vanderbilt, but he's not just struggling. Opposing teams are literally targeting him play after play, and he's getting beat play after play, and that's a really bad sign. That means your opponent asking, how are we going to beat this team? They say, we're going to go after that guy. So he's going to come down 2. And then Dylan Cole, also a guy who kind of broke out last year, came out of nowhere, played as one of the highest rated cover linebackers in the NFL, just hasn't shown any of that this year. So he comes down 4, he's barely playing. So he seems like he was more of a flash in the pan, out of nowhere, and then disappears guy, but we'll see. So that puts a wrap on that game. Then we got Green Bay at Washington. Starting with Green Bay, this is a defense that just can't seem to figure themselves out and put together a complete game. They've really had one really good half and one really bad half in every game this year. I think a big part of that is tremendous holes at specific positions. I think the linebacker and the safety coverage for this team is really bad right now. Defending the middle of the field is a problem. And we'll talk a little more about Kentrell Bryce in the fallers section. We put him on blast last week. It's going to happen again. Spoiler alert. Offensively, I'm not worried about Green Bay yet. Brian Bulaga got injured in this game. Rodgers is maybe 60% of himself right now, which, if that knee doesn't heal over the course of the season, then it's going to become a problem. But you would think at some point that thing's going to start to heal up. I know he practiced earlier this week than he had in the last couple, but you had really bad drops in this game. Randall Cobb had a terrible game. He fumbled in the fourth quarter. You effectively had 4 turnovers based on the fumble and the 3 drops, 2 on third down and 1 on fourth down. Green Bay was moving the ball. They just weren't finishing drives. And then on Washington's side, this really looked like the Washington team that I talked about in my deep dive, where they've got some nice things offensively. Alex Smith is going to offer something they didn't have in Kirk Cousins, and that he's going to take really good care of the football. I figured he would help the run game with his threat as a play-action boot guy. All that's happening. This team's running the ball. They got good offensive line play. And then defensively, like I said, they're going to give up some yards, and there could be weeks where they actually don't look like a very good defense, but so far we've seen the good Washington defense, the physical defense, asserting themselves up front, forcing turnovers. This is a good Washington football team. I think they're going to get into that playoff picture when all is said and done. You really got to play a good game against this team who's basically going to make you make mistakes and not make their own mistakes, and that's a really good winning formula. So just one piece of movement in this game, actually, and it's going to be Kentrell Bryce again. He's going to go down to a 65 overall. Now, we basically put him on blast last week. He was the reason this team lost to Minnesota, or at least it felt like a loss. They ended up tying that game, but showing really, really poor instincts as a center fielding safety in that game, and then it happens all over again this week. Paul Richardson ends up with a 50-yard touchdown that he had no business even catching that ball. Completely blown coverage by Kentrell Bryce. And then later in this game, he comes up to make a tackle on Adrian Peterson, completely whiffs, and then slams into Muhammad Wilkerson. Wilkerson goes on to fall to the ground and have a significant ankle injury. He's going to miss the rest of the season. So despite addressing this secondary that has rolled out a ton of undrafted players in this secondary, they're still managing to put these guys in critical positions where they can cost their team games. I'd be pretty shocked if Bryce is starting this week, but we'll see. I was surprised he started in week 3. Bryce is currently the 99th ranked safety by PFF in the NFL. He put up a rating of 42 this week. To put that in perspective, the 67th ranked safety in the NFL, Patrick Chung, has a grade of 62 on the season. To put in perspective why I don't understand why Kentrell Bryce is frankly even on an NFL roster. So moving on, Oakland at Miami. I thought Oakland actually played pretty well in this game. They really dominated the time of possession. They came out hot and early. Jordy Nelson gets involved. But Miami sticking with that formula of just kind of sticking with things defensively, hoping for big plays. They get another one late in this game from Jakeem Grant. And Miami, like I said, a mentally tough football team. They're going to force the other team to make mistakes, play conservatively, and it works out for them again this week. Now, Miami's got to go to New England this week. This is a huge game for both teams. Miami gets a chance to kind of announce themselves as a legitimate threat, not just a 3-0 team with some wins that they probably should have won every game that they've played so far. And then for New England, they got to show that they can play some defense. And then Oakland, they're just not a good football team. They don't have any talent on defense. They don't have a lot of talent on offense. And I'm pretty sure they're not a very good coached football team. TBD. So 3 risers, fallers from this game. Jordy Nelson is going to go up. I had kind of written him off. He definitely still showed some burst here, going over 100 yards. And then Tahir Whitehead is going to go down for the Raiders. A pretty decent free agent signing. Really hasn't worked out for them so far, coming over from Detroit. And then for Miami, they're going to have a riser here, Xavier Howard at cornerback, +1 for Howard this week. Now, I like Howard. He's had a lot of inconsistent weeks. Hasn't even played that great until this week, but a really good game this week. We'll see how he looks against New England and Tom Brady next week. But I do like his upside. Now we've got the battle for LA, Chargers at Rams. Really not many surprises in this one, to be honest. The Rams are a buzzsaw right now. I've been impressed with their offense. I figured the Chargers were going to move the ball. For them to fumble the ball, driving, about to go down by just 1 score late in the 4th quarter, as soon as they kind of get some momentum to fumble and just end the game just like that, the least surprising Chargers ending to a game you could think of. So our studs and duds from this game, on the Chargers side, Mike Williams going to get a +2. He's shown us why he was a top 10 pick. He's a big physical receiver. He's a great red zone target. Definitely filling kind of that hole that they missed when Hunter Henry went down. The offense has been great for the Chargers. But then we're actually going to get a -2 for every Charger starting corner. All 3 of these guys kind of broke out in a way. We knew Casey Hayward was a good corner, but he was arguably the best corner in the NFL last year. And they just haven't played at that same level. They're all going to come down to, clearly they're missing Joey Bosa, what he brings from a pass rush perspective. All still really good players, I think, and they should play well again when Bosa returns, but you can't just rely on a good pass rush to be great corners. This defense is getting kind of picked apart right now. And then Jared Goff. I'm not the biggest Jared Goff guy. I still think he has a lot to be desired in terms of play extension, sensing pressure, making plays outside of the system. And for that reason, I've kind of compared him to Matt Ryan. But watching Jared Goff these last couple weeks, he's got such a strong arm. I think for that reason, he probably has a higher ceiling than Matt Ryan. He is just ripping some balls in there. So he is going to get a +1 this week, a boost to his throw power most notably. I knew he had a good arm, but I don't think we've seen him ripping the ball like this before. It could be something he's really developed and worked on, or maybe he's just more confident now. But I like what we're seeing from Jared Goff. And then Malcolm Brown, the backup running back, is going to get a boost here, +3. And then, as if the Rams hadn't added enough good players this year, under the radar, they pick up Austin Blythe off of waivers from the Colts. I don't know when he even arrived on this roster, if it was in the offseason or last year. He may have been on the practice squad. But anyway, he's starting at right guard, and he's killing it. His PFF ratings are off the charts. He's one of the highest rated guards in football right now. He's going to get a +6 this week. This Rams offense is just in full force right now. One of 3 or 4 just buzzsaw offenses between Atlanta, New Orleans, and Kansas City. we're seeing some fireworks this year. So we got 4 games left. Dallas at Seattle. Not a lot of surprises in this one. Seattle was my lock of the week. Thought they would bounce back in a big way. I thought the defense was going to show some nice things this week in their first home game. And that's pretty much exactly what we saw. On Dallas's side, you're still definitely worried about this offense. Defensively, it was more of the same. They got some players, but they got some serious holes. And overall for Dallas, I don't think they're a very well-coached team on either side. So risers and fallers from this game, we'll start with Dallas. We got 2 risers on the defensive side of the ball. They did play a good game defensively. Byron Jones, again, I think he might be the number 1 rated corner by PFF right now. Really surprising me. I didn't even think he was going to start here, making that transition to corner. He's doing a lot more than starting. He's playing at a very high level, playing every snap and doing it well. And then Jalen Smith playing back-to-back nice weeks. We know the upside's there. He's got the injury history, but settling in a little bit right now. Sean Lee's going to miss some time, so they're going to really rely on Jalen Smith a lot, I think, in the next few weeks. And then on Seattle's side, Bradley McDougald, the new starting strong safety. Get to know this guy's name. He's the, I guess, heir apparent to Cam Chancellor. He's not anywhere close to the player that Cam Chancellor was, but he's a really good safety. He played well last year when Chancellor went down, and he's back at it again. So he's going to get a +1 this week. Chris Carson running really hard like he does. He's going to get a +1 this week as well. And then I'll have to admit, I've been really impressed with Tyler Lockett this year. I was critical of the Seahawks when they gave him that 3-year, $30 million contract, but they knew what they were doing. They've got a player here in Tyler Lockett. He's had injury history here, but they say, hey, stay healthy. You can be a big piece of this offense. And with Doug Baldwin gone, he has stepped up. Most notably, he's moving the ball downfield. I had kind of figured he's just a slot guy, but he's a really versatile receiver and a playmaker. It seems they did the right thing here in giving him that contract. I think at this point, I'd much rather have Tyler Lockett at $10 million than Paul Richardson at $10 million. So some good managing of the team there by the front office, who's received some criticism in the last couple years for how this team has gone. But Seattle on the right track here. Dallas, I'm definitely worried about. Let's move on to Chicago at Arizona. Arizona is just a train wreck. They're still pretty tough defensively, especially at home here. But you can only do so much when your offense stalls like that. They go up early, and then Sam Bradford I don't even know if he crossed midfield after the first quarter. They can't get David Johnson going. They have no blocking. And then they turn to Josh Rosen at the end. I think that's the wrong way to do it. I think you either should have started him in this game or just let Bradford ride it out and then put Rosen in. I mean, I get it. You want to recreate the Baker Mayfield thing, but Bradford and Rosen are pretty similar players. I did not think that things were just going to change because you went to the rookie, and I kind of share that approach for the rest of the season. I don't have very high hopes for Josh Rosen right now. He's got a great arm, but he is kind of that pocket passing or system quarterback, whatever you want to call it. There's no system here. He's not a guy that's going to come out and do what Deshaun Watson did last year or Carson Wentz in his rookie year and kind of save his confidence, or Josh Allen in Buffalo this year. All those guys are mobile. Josh Rosen, you could be just destroying this guy by throwing him out there with no receivers and no offensive line. For Chicago, great defensively, bad offensively. It's been the story of their season. So a lot of risers and fallers in this one. For Chicago, some risers on the defensive side of the ball. Eddie Jackson. I'd kind of taken a pump the brakes with him as he sort of broke out as a rookie, but he's showing some great range as a center fielder right now. Really impressing. He's been one of the best safeties in the NFL this year. He's going to go up too. And then Prince Amukamara is playing very well, opposite of Kyle Fuller, who's also playing pretty well. Leonard Floyd is going to go down 1. You know, I would have liked to see him kind of emerge a little more. He's not getting a lot of attention. The D-line is healthy with Hicks. You got Khalil Mack, obviously, on the other side. He really has not stepped up or developed at all and is not much of an impact player here. He's a lot closer to a rotational edge guy than an impact edge guy right now. I still believe in the upside. He just hasn't really developed much since a rookie year. And then a lot of fallers on the Cardinals side, unfortunately. It's going to start with Sam Bradford going down 3. Just couldn't get anything going. And who knows if we're going to see him starting again. We probably will if the history of Sam Bradford has anything to say. It's probably not going to be here in Arizona, though. David Johnson is going to go down 1. I still love him. I still think there's a chance he's the best running back in the NFL. But his thing has always been the ability to succeed despite a poor offensive line, despite bad quarterback play. And they just can't get him going right now. I feel bad for him. I still think he's a great player, but We did have to bring him down. And then J.J. Nelson, -4. I thought I saw some nice things from him on tape, creating a lot of separation downfield, and maybe Rosen can get Nelson going a little bit. He really is a one-trick pony with the deep ball, which Sam Bradford was almost not even willing to try this year. So maybe we see him bounce back, but man, he has done nothing. He's barely playing here in Arizona. So he's going to go down 4. Justin Pugh going to come down 2. Free agent addition, really struggled in New York last year. A former first-round pick. Was at one point a stud guard, but has not played at that level for almost 2 years. So he's going to come down. Chandler Jones is going to come down 1. Not doing a good job getting after the quarterback this year. And then Deion Buchanan was our dud of the week. So not a good week for the Cardinals. Not a good year for the Cardinals fans. Time to move on to the Sunday night game, New England at Detroit. I thought Detroit kind of was who we thought they were. I don't think it's a terrible defense. They just kind of lack playmakers, especially at pass rush. And then offensively, we know they're a pretty good offense. They got really good receivers. Their offensive line's pretty good. Matthew Stafford. They're now getting a running game going. I'm definitely intrigued by the upside of this offense as we enter the next month of the year, because I do think it would have to be like a top 10 offense for this to be a playoff team. I don't necessarily consider them a top 10 offense right now, though I do think it's a good offense. And then on New England's side, we're taking the don't bet against them approach as of now. This is the week, though. Seriously, I've been kind of half and half on the end of the world scenario for New England here, and on the other half of they'll be fine. And so far, it has looked like the end of the world. Tom Brady has not looked great. I thought about dropping him this week. I'm going to wait to see what he looks like in the biggest game of the year right now against Miami. And I need to see this defense figure some things out. Now, Juwan Bentley goes down, put on the IR this week. And Bentley's been a really nice player, a young player, but kind of a weird take here. I actually think that could be a blessing in disguise, because you got Hightower there, really nice player, but he's not a sideline-to-sideline linebacker, at least in coverage. And Juwan Bentley showed some nice things in coverage, but he fell in the draft. It was basically an undrafted prospect because he's not a good athlete at all. So if this means they get some better athletes in there, and I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know if is it Nicholas Grigsby? Do they convert Derek Rivers to outside linebacker? Who knows what they're going to do? But getting some more speed in that second level could be the answer here for New England. They've done this in the past, figured it out, turned it into a top 10 defense. Like I said, I'm not betting against it. This is a big week. Big week. Let's talk about the risers and fallers. One riser for New England on the defensive side, Dietrich Wise, has been a bright spot for a defense that's really struggled. Edge defender, part of that rotation. Derek Rivers, a player I had pretty high expectations for this year, has not been playing much at all. I kind of had him pegged as a potential breakout star this year, and he has done the opposite. Then Malcolm Brown, the nose tackle, is not playing very well right now. So a lot of concerns for New England, especially in that front seven in terms of the pass rush, the coverage. It's just not working right now. Then we'll flip over to the Detroit side. Kerryon Johnson getting a +1 this week. He looks great. Definitely buying into him with this kind of reinvigorated Lions offense that I think is poised for a good season right now. Romeo Okwara, a guy they picked up from New York, who they let go because of a scheme change. He had a great week playing off the edge. He's going to go up 1. He could definitely continue to go up if he plays like that. Jamal Agnew, we know as a punt returner, he's one of the best returners in the league, but he's actually playing as their starting slot corner right now. He's doing it pretty well. He's going to get a +1 this week, a few more good weeks, and he could be into the 70s. And then Glover Quinn is going to come down, 32 years old, has not been a strength for that defense. I love Glover Quinn. He's had an excellent career, just not playing at a very high level right now. Probably getting towards the end for Glover Quinn. All right, last game, this Megalodon episode, Pittsburgh at Tampa Bay. This one looked about as I expected. I did pick Pittsburgh to win in this game. Fitzpatrick struggled a lot early and then just kind of got the magic going again in the second half. Pittsburgh's defense, I'm very worried about. They still got a good offense. It's more than good. They still got a very good offense, even without Le'Veon Bell. We'll see if he ends up coming back. It'd probably change the outlook a little bit if they got Le'Veon Bell in there, especially as the weather's getting colder. We know Big Ben outdoors in the climates, that's when he kind of shows that bad version of Big Ben that we've kind of gotten familiar with. And then with Tampa, I'm still not really buying in. I'm willing to admit it's a good offense. They got a ton of playmakers. Their offensive line is decent. I just don't trust Fitzpatrick. I think the Fitzpatrick we saw in the first half of this game is what you should expect to get pretty much every game. I kind of think this is the last week of Fitzmagic, and then we see Jameis moving forward as Tampa decides what the future quarterback situation is going to be for Tampa. So good on Pittsburgh to get their first win of the season, kind of get things rolling. Tampa returning to normal a little bit. Still kind of like the offense. Anyway, let's finish up here, talk about the studs and duds from this game. We do have quite a few. Bud Dupree, I did go up +2. I've been critical of this pass rush, but he's played better than a 70 where I've got him. He's got 9 hurries on the year. Granted, 6 of them came against Cleveland, but he's actually getting after the passer much better than TJ Watt. I'm about a week away from dropping TJ Watt. He has not been impressive this year at all. Juju Smith-Schuster is going to get a +2, just an emerging star in this league. Nothing I can really say about him. And then speaking of emerging stars in this league, flipping over to the Tampa Bay side, Chris Godwin killing it this week. OJ Howard +2, so a couple of my favorite draft prospects from last year really emerging this year. OJ Howard, I believe, is the #1 rated tight end by PFF this season. Big reason this offense has opened up so much. Just he can do so many things. You can just tell the impact having a tight end like him who can stretch the field. He's blocking better. He's got catch and run ability. That's a lot for the defense to take in, and it really just opens things up. His ceiling is so much higher than Cameron Brate. It's ridiculous. And I think him emerging as potentially one of the 2 or 3 best tight ends in the NFL, he's playing like the best tight end in the NFL right now. If he continues this pace, he is the best tight end in the NFL. That could be a reason that maybe Jameis comes back and gets some things going and kind of restarts his career with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans and OJ Howard. You got some crazy weapons here. That's not even mentioning Deshaun Jackson. But I am worried about the defense for the Bucs. We do have Ryan Jensen's going to fall this week. We talked a little bit about him breaking out, kind of a one-year wonder for Baltimore last year, hits free agency, gets a bunch of money, and he's not playing anywhere close to the level he was at last year with Baltimore. And then Vinny Curry, he's going to come down. He's a free agent addition. Tampa really stressed getting that pass rush upgraded. Jason Pierre-Paul had a nice game this week, but the pass rush has still not been very good for Tampa at all. Justin Evans, the young safety, he's going to get a +1. We're going to see a lot of him as the free safety here with Chris Connie going down. That's a blessing in disguise as well. Chris Connie, I made fun of Kentrell Bryce earlier. I am very surprised that Chris Connie has been starting in the NFL as long as he has. It feels like every other week he's getting exploited, giving up big plays. So Justin Evans going to switch over. I mean, he does play some center field occasionally, but they're really going to rely on him. He's had a very good year. But then Jordan Whitehead comes in. He's a prospect I really liked. He's a playmaker. He was kind of a nickel corner in college, and he's going to do a lot of that nickel coverage stuff for this team as a more traditional strong safety, I believe. But I like this safety duo, and it's something to keep an eye on. I don't love the rest of this defense, but I'm buying into that combination of safeties there with Justin Evans and Jordan Whitehead, a couple of exciting young players. So wow, that's it. So much to talk about. I think we hit everything. Sorry for being later this week. It's something that it might just be the reality that this doesn't come out till Thursday night, Friday morning. Again, I want to make sure I talk about everything. I want to include as much film as possible as well. That's a big part of the editing process. So if there's not as much film in this one as like last week, I'm sorry about that. Just going to have to take my word on some of this stuff, I guess. So please do hit that like button. If you made it this far, you probably liked it. So you might as well hit that like button. It helps me out a lot. I'm going to go watch this Vikings-Rams game. Hope you guys enjoy it. Hope you like the video. Cheers, and we'll see you next time.